Great. All right, we'll go ahead and get started. We haven't met before. Hello, my name is Susan Strom, and I'm the Chief Client Officer at Knowledge Architecture. And with me today is the Chief Marketing Officer from LS3P, Katie Robinson. And you are in a Intranet Tour, which is a place where we share stories of how our clients are using synthesis to help evolve and grow their firms through knowledge management. Today, we're spotlighting LS3P and the recent launch of their synthesis intranet, F.R.A.N.K. So while F.R.A.N.K is relatively new to LS3P knowledge management definitely is not new. And that's largely because of Katie's leadership. I really think of Katie as both a chief marketing and knowledge officer. She has, over the years, put these strategic systems in place that have stopped the madness of having to look for the same information over and over again. Really using knowledge management tools, both to help marketing function really well at LS3P, but then that expands way beyond marketing into the business. So she is no stranger to new systems. And in many ways, I think F.R.A.N.K is just like another system that she has led with a team and put in place to help LS3P grow and evolve. If you are already using synthesis, I hope that through this tour and story, you see something new that you can take away and use right away. And if you are not yet using synthesis, I hope that this gives you kind of a behind the scenes view of what a home run implementation looks like. So without further ado, I will hand it over to Katie. Katie, thank you so much for joining us.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Susan. So as I start to share my screen, I'm going to go ahead and share a little bit of information about myself. I was joking with Susan that I'm going to hire her to do all of my introductions from now on because that was lovely. But I am the Chief Marketing Officer at LS3P. This is my 20th year with the firm. I used to joke that I started when I was 12, but I think that joke has gotten a little bit old. It is really an amazing firm. LS3P has 12 offices located throughout the Southeast, but our projects span across the country. We work in about 12 different project sectors, from healthcare, higher education, K-12, hospitality, all the way to industrial. And our vision really guides everything we do. We focus on creating architecture that enriches the community with a really strong focus on design excellence, building expertise, sharing innovation, and most importantly, collaborating with one another. So, of course, we can't really showcase expertise, drive innovation, or even collaborate unless everyone is on the same page. And what better way to get on the same page than one central source of truth in the form of an intranet? So I wanted to dive in a little bit before what our life was like before we had synthesis. It wasn't horrible, but it wasn't great. We had a collection of applications where combined together formed our intranet. So this consisted of a custom LS3P dashboard that held several strategic reports, such as monthly financials and project metric reports, as well as a series of resources and links to what we called LS3P Knowledge, which was a Bookstack wiki that was really the bulk of our intranet, with a series of book-like resources. We use Deltek Vantagepoint. We merged to Vantagepoint last spring. Heavy users, a lot of project data in that platform. Really heavy users also of Microsoft Teams. So our primary form of really internal communications before the synthesis was using a firm-wide Teams channel to share all firm-wide news. We also use OpenAsset for our project imagery, and then Zendesk to help with all of our technical support. So having all of those elements in place kind of supported our intranet, but they really weren't integrated at a high level. The turning point for us when we started to think about using other intranet platforms was really the introduction of Power BI. our strategic reporting committee really started diving into the power of Power BI in terms of data visualization. So quickly, we saw that a lot of the resources that we built in our custom dashboard were no longer relevant because everybody went to our strategic reporting app for financials, projections, so much information. So we were kind of making that portion of our existing intranet obsolete because we didn't need to use it anymore. So we had a decision to make. We had to figure out what were we going to do from here. Quite frankly, for us, the decision was fairly easy because I had been engaged with Susan and Chris in knowledge architecture for several years. I've heard a lot about synthesis. I knew a lot of firms who were using it, and there were firms that I really trusted in terms of knowing the right platform to use. So the decision to take the leap was actually fairly easy. A couple of the things that really stood out for us was obviously this integration. As I mentioned, we have a lot of project data. We use OpenAsset, we use Zendesk. We wanted to make sure that whatever we brought to our team really incorporated all of those seamlessly. So it truly could be a one-stop shop and you weren't pushed out to all these different avenues for your information. And then naturally, the security also was really important to us to make sure that the content within our intranet was kept safe. So we had buy-in. We knew what platform we were going to engage in. Now we needed to make sure that we had a really stellar team to help put this in place. This team consisted of individuals from knowledge management, migrating the content from our existing platforms, a contract coordinator who focused solely on project resources and codes, and a couple of members of our marketing team leading the branding efforts. This would not have been possible without these individuals, namely Madison Millsatz, Meredith Ray, and Justin Lopez. Just had to give a shout out to them. Nobody Googled them on LinkedIn. They're very happy here. But then we had to create a place to collaborate with one another. So we created a subchannel within our knowledge management Teams channel because Teams was still going to be here. Even though we may not use Teams for internal communication anymore, Microsoft Teams is still really valuable to our firm in terms of individual teams collaborating with one another to develop resources before they're sent to the intranet. So we took to a subchannel within our knowledge management Teams channel, where we help things like the essential content audit from knowledge architecture, a shared OneNote file with our to-do items, internal questions, and then questions that we needed to ask Susan and Greg during our check-ins, as well as a section of any future ideas that maybe we weren't ready to roll out yet, but we hope to roll out in the future. So at this point, we had approval from the key decision makers. We had a team to build the intranet, but now we needed to generate excitement firm-wide for this. So naturally, we took to Teams. On our firm-wide Teams channel, we asked people, name our intranet. We gave them a little bit of a teaser that something new was coming, but we didn't share a whole lot. And we asked for suggestions. We got a couple of really fun ones. And then all of a sudden, as what often happens in architecture, acronyms started to pop up everywhere. And one of them really stood out because it was a nod to our founder, Frank Lucas, whose knowledge truly is the foundation that our firm was built on. So after tons of positive likes and comments from Frank for the name F.R.A.N.K, we officially named the intranet F.R.A.N.K. F.R.A.N.K also stands for Firm-Wide Resource, All News and Knowledge. So now we had our name. We wanted to make sure that as we worked behind the scenes in building all of the content in F.R.A.N.K, we still had that excitement generating amongst our team. So as we built it, we also continued to post on our firm-wide Teams channel little teasers, if you will, all around the headline of Let's Be F.R.A.N.K. The teasers included previews of different aspects of F.R.A.N.K as we were building them, such as the projects and employee directories. So we sent those out as, just little screenshots of what it was going to look like, a little bit of information about the integration with OpenAsset and Deltek Vantagepoint. And then we reminded people, hey, if you want your employee record to look great on F.R.A.N.K, you need to make sure the employee record in Vantagepoint is up to date, or your project data is up to date, and your images are in OpenAsset. So it was also our way of pushing people to do a little bit of cleanup before the launch itself. So at that point, we were ready to launch. We launched F.R.A.N.K officially on January 25th of this year. It went live. After we launched F.R.A.N.K, we held a series of Let's Meet F.R.A.N.K online demonstrations where we walked the team through all of the different aspects of the intranet and how they could engage with F.R.A.N.K. We recorded these sessions and naturally we posted them on F.R.A.N.K for people who were not able to attend, so they had that resource. So where are we 168 days later after launch? We're doing pretty good. On average, roughly 85% of our team members are being reached, opening or engaging in our post. Our content is being viewed over 6,000 times each week by roughly 80% of our team members. So I'm an analytics person. Those were great. But as I prepared for this presentation, I wanted to hear from the firm. So I posted a question on What Else, F.R.A.N.K, asking people, what do you like about F.R.A.N.K? And I want to read you a couple of the comments that came back. I love having a centralized resource for everything, from submitting a purchase order to identifying a team member with a particular skill to project data and beyond. I'm enjoying the improved ease of navigation that F.R.A.N.K has afforded over the previous platform. It's much more intuitive. It's hard to corral and satisfy 500 or so head of cattle, but I think F.R.A.N.K gets us closer than ever to accomplishing that. F.R.A.N.K is great. I use the employee directory often to remind myself of the size of different offices and who sits where. I have used the search field many times and it takes me right where I want to go. And my personal favorite, I appreciate not having to keep track of all of the HR resources myself. I am only a semi-functional adult. So that was my favorite one of all of them. So now I want to stop sharing this PowerPoint and actually jump into F.R.A.N.K itself. So give me just a moment to navigate to F.R.A.N.K and share that screen with you. Okay. So this is F.R.A.N.K. F.R.A.N.K's homepage is probably similar to a lot of the other homepages that you've seen. We wanted to keep it as simple as possible. It contains a mainstream block of posts. We have a button for a support ticket with IT. So if you click on it, you can fill out your support ticket, which then goes through our Zendesk feature. We have a F.R.A.N.K virtual suggestion box, and this is really high tech, y'all. If you open it, then it actually opens a Microsoft Forms for you to fill out for any suggestions that you have for virtual resources on F.R.A.N.K. We also welcome our new team members and we celebrate the anniversaries of some of our teams as well, which is really fun. We have icons that take you directly to some of our social media profiles, but then also things like OpenAsset, Deltek Vantagepoint, and our Power BI strategic reporting app. Our main communities are at the top, and I'm just going to hover over them quickly so you can see the content that is in each community. Our home community really focuses on the firm as a whole. It focuses on the about us, our vision, our values, our leadership, all of our internal recognitions that we do. We have all of our 12 offices listed with resources if you're visiting any of the offices or if you happen to live in the cities the offices are in. And then easy access to our directories, which was really important to us. We have a series of quick links that we found people used often by looking at the analytics from our previous platforms. We wanted to make sure they were still at the ready for individuals for quick picks for them. And then naturally, we have one more location for the virtual suggestion box because we want to hear from our team. We want to know what they want to see on F.R.A.N.K. The people in finance community has everything from HR type resources to accounting type resources. This is where individuals can find the employee handbook, all things regarding time and travel. How do I do a check request? How do I do a purchase order? And also a little bit more about the benefits offered at LS3P. Our projects and practice community focuses on the practice side of our firm, the architecture, the interiors, the planning. This is where we can find all project management resources, all codes. So all of the different building codes that are floating out on the intranet are all compiled into one location. And then we have several internal groups as well. We call them knowledge teams and PACs for practice advancement centers. And then we also have some sectors that we do work in, but maybe they're not as large as some of our PACs are. Under technology, we have what you would expect under technology. We have the basics, all of the different business applications, design technology, and then we also have our brand new community that we actually launched yesterday afternoon after a firm-wide town hall where we unveiled some of the AI applications that we are going to be testing out within the firm. We also have my favorite community, marketing and knowledge, because these are my people. This is where you can really explore the marketing team, the business development teams, and the knowledge management team. We have all of the resources for proactive marketing materials as well as responsive marketing. So those proposals and interviews that you go on to secure work. And then a lot of guides and resources from branding all the way to resources that are local to each community that you may need. In the knowledge management section of it, we have memos from experts saved and stored. We have a dictionary because we found that, as I mentioned when we named F.R.A.N.K, we really like acronyms. So we've put together this really fun dictionary where we have a whole bunch of ArchiTalk type acronyms that people can reference. And then information about our data collection program, which is really important to us. Finally, the main community that we have at the top is the learning community. This walks us through all of the different aspects of learning. There's videos that are shared from internal presentations that have been recorded. There's tips and tricks. There's a section on getting your professional license. And then there's some fun recommendations, like what are you reading? What are you listening to right now? It's kind of like online book clubs, if you will, for individuals. So those are our main communities. I'm going to click on a couple of them to take you a little bit deeper into F.R.A.N.K. And we're going to start with branding because everything is revolving around our brand. We want to make sure that F.R.A.N.K maintains its integrity. So we have a few F.R.A.N.K content editors. These are the individuals that can really get in and create these different sections within F.R.A.N.K. And we wanted to make sure that we were consistent with our brand throughout. So this is a private community that we set up for these individuals. And essentially, it takes them through all of the different structures of the main elements that we use within F.R.A.N.K. One of the elements has direct links as well. So communities will take you right to a sample of a community page. A guide takes you right to the example of a guide page. And then the smart notification pages also will open that page directly. So we wanted to make this in an environment that people could see what the brand was supposed to be like, but then also see how you can get in and test and play with F.R.A.N.K as well. We also want to make sure people knew how to engage in F.R.A.N.K. So under learning, we set up a F.R.A.N.K 101. This is everything that they need to know about F.R.A.N.K. So it goes from everything of who's responsible for F.R.A.N.K, how to post, how to search. And what was really cool about building this resource is we had to do very little work because knowledge architecture had these amazing tutorials already there, and we just simply linked to those. So it really walks everybody through how to use F.R.A.N.K and how to engage in it. And then we have a section on new resources. So anytime a new resource is posted on F.R.A.N.K with the hashtag new resource, it shows up automatically in this feed as well. So when team members are becoming familiar with F.R.A.N.K, they also have a quick access to seeing these new resources, which is really helpful. So while I showed you the main communities at the top, we have a lot of sub-communities as well. We actually have 28 of them total. So some of these sub-communities fall under this. And whenever we thought about whether a section of F.R.A.N.K should be a page or a community or some other combination, we thought to ourselves, how do we want people to engage with this? And if we wanted them to have a home to engage together, then it became a community. We also didn't want people to have to figure out how to navigate communities from one to another. So we wanted to make sure we had consistency. So for example, on our main sectors that we have a community and all of them look the same. So what you're seeing right now is the healthcare community. We start with the main feed where people can share something. They can ask questions to our experts. On the right-hand side, we have healthcare quick contacts, and then also a list of all of our sector leaders with healthcare. We love the function where it shows their team's status, so you can know quickly, who's available at this moment to ask a quick question to and who may be on a call or in a meeting. So really helpful. All of the pages and subsections we also made consistent from community to community. So whenever I click on another one, I know I'm going to know how to do my time and expense if I'm working within healthcare. A quick resource to the projects that are only healthcare. Both proactive marketing materials as well as project sheets in OpenAsset are quickly linked and accessible. And then practice resources. So if you see healthcare, and then if I click on higher ed, it's the same format. We still have our quick contacts, we still have our sector leaders, we still have our share something feed, and then we still have the main categories at the top. The resources may be a little bit different depending on the sector, but at least there's that consistency in communities, which I think is really helpful. We also determined that we really love guides. Like y'all, we really, really, really love guides. We don't want our people to have to scroll. And we also knew that we had a lot of information to share, and we wanted to make sure that it was really accessible. So throughout F.R.A.N.K, you'll see that we use guides probably more than any other type of layout, because we can quickly navigate through the entire section of things like brand guidelines, and you can quickly jump to what you're really looking for. So we discovered guides about, I would say, 3 or 4 weeks into building F.R.A.N.K, and it was a game changer. So we were like, oh, nope, this is going to be a guide. And this is, so basically, if you had to scroll down more than twice on a page, it went to a guide form, which was immensely helpful for us. We also really like the smart navigation blocks as well. For example, quick access to all of our offices in more of a visual way. Just so we can have that visually rather than just a drop-down list of all of our offices. We really like to incorporate that. Just a fun fact, if there's any developers listening in on the call, if you want to create something in Noah's Marsh by Columbia, South Carolina, that's the center point of all of our offices, and you will have a client for life because we would have all of our corporate events there, but there's actually not much there at all. So just a little fun fact. One of the things that people really liked about F.R.A.N.K, and one of the things they went to first, was the employee directory. We spent a little bit of time customizing some of the different views to make it easier for our team members. So we have a quick views for our skills directory, licenses, accreditations, and different internal groups, as well as quick sorts for all team members in our various offices. This information relies 100% on information from Deltek Vantagepoint. So it's also a great way for our team members to remember to keep their employee record up to date, which is really helpful. I'm going to pick on our CEO, Mark Marchant, and show you a little glimpse into his employee record on F.R.A.N.K. We kept this pretty simple as well, but again, this is completely powered through Vantagepoint. We don't have anything that's entered directly into F.R.A.N.K on this, so it's really helpful. Every team member has a bio that is saved from the marketing team in Vantagepoint. It quickly displays their contact information at the top, as well as any recent posts they have made throughout the platform. We also have several of our key fields from Vantagepoint linked just so we can have quick access to those as well. And then the projects that the individuals have spent time on. We did limit this to having to spend at least 20 hours or more on a project. And then one part of Deltek Vision that we have as well is this fun facts section that employees can fill out, and then that filters into their employee record in F.R.A.N.K as well. And because our team members are the heart and soul of our firm, we wanted to make sure that we had a place on F.R.A.N.K that really celebrated them as well. So we created a TeamNews section on F.R.A.N.K. So anytime anything is posted on F.R.A.N.K that uses that hashtag TeamNews, it's collected in this one resource. So this is a great resource where we can go and just spend a few minutes scrolling through and celebrating all of the amazing accomplishments that our team members are doing. And I think it's sections like this that really bring F.R.A.N.K to life, because these are the sections we see people engage with the most. They like, they comment, because they all want to really be able to support one another. So that is F.R.A.N.K. At this point, I will stop sharing and we can see if there's any questions.
Yeah, thank you so much, Katie, for taking us behind the scenes for the deep tour. I see a couple questions are here, so we'll get started. And just a reminder to everybody, click the question Q&A thing in your Zoom bar. Please ask questions. You can also upvote questions, which helps us kind of decide where we're going to spend our time. All right, the first question is about generating and managing the skills section in employee bios. How do you generate and manage the skills section in employee bios?
That's a great question. So we pull that directly from a grid in Vantagepoint. It's on the employee record. It's opened up periodically throughout the year, so team members can go in and update their skills, not only their skills, but their level of the skills. At that point, it can be vetted by their people manager just to make sure, yep, this person really is an expert, or not quite an expert yet. Let's put you down to maybe a novice, and then you'll get there. So it is monitored, but essentially that is a direct pull from a grid in Vantagepoint.
Thank you. There is a question about that support ticket pop up. And once you showed it, I was like counting the minutes until someone asked the question, because I knew people would want to know how that works.
That works through the magic of our amazing technology team. So I honestly, it is coding behind the scenes. It's an embedded code that was created by a fantastic member of our technology team. I wish I was intelligent enough to tell you everything behind it, but it does work as a, if you select embedded code and put it in there, that's what's functioning that.
Yeah, and if anyone would like to follow up about that, you can email support and I can help you connect with the right folks on our team to learn more. A question about the build out and the effort there versus the effort for maintenance. So the exact question is, how many staff help to do the initial build out versus staff maintaining the site?
We had a lot of resources, but honestly, the transition from everything that we had into F.R.A.N.K was primarily 3 people working on it. The main individual was Madison Millsaps, who just kind of fell in love with F.R.A.N.K, thank goodness, and just jumped in and really helped to create a lot of the content. And then we did do kind of a tag team, where we had Madison and a couple of other individuals helping to simply pull the content over from Wiki And then I had a couple of members of my marketing team, led by our marketing director, Meredith Ray, who went through and just made sure everything was cohesive with brand. So everything didn't fall on one person, but the majority of work fell really amongst about 3 individuals in terms of populating F.R.A.N.K originally. From a maintenance standpoint, we hope that all team members, number one, will help us maintain it. If a link ever breaks or if there's a new resource using the virtual suggestion box. But Madison does take the lead in making sure that F.R.A.N.K stays fresh and that people are really helping to generate content. And then we also talk about F.R.A.N.K a lot. We talk about F.R.A.N.K in every meeting. If someone is saying something and says, I wish I had access to that, great, get it on F.R.A.N.K. So we constantly remind team members that it is everybody's responsibility to help us build this resource.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, which again, I feel like really speaks to what I said in the intro about the change management and like the people and process side of this work, and just knowledge management work in general, which I feel like, Katie, you're so experienced at and so good at, and you can like really see it come through here. But it's not rocket science. It's just about communication and clarity. Then everyone can be involved. There is a question that, Katie, I'd love to get your take on it. You might not be able to fully answer it. The question is, how customizable is synthesis by non-developer staff? So I'm wondering if you could speak to just your experience customizing things, because you are not a developer.
Right. So I will say, luckily, we have not had to customize F.R.A.N.K very much in terms of anything that wasn't already established by knowledge architecture, which is amazing. I feel like you guys did such a great job of thinking about every single type of possibility. It really makes it easy to decide which elements you really like and to customize it. There's no coding you need to know. There's no, other things that you really need to know other than you hover over something, you pick the element you want, it appears. And when I was bringing some team members on board to help populate it, the way that I explained it is, guys, if you can use Word, you can use F.R.A.N.K. It's that easy. It's you just select something and it appears, which is amazing. I do love the fact that there was the foresight to also think about putting in that option for some embedded code. So if you did have some individuals on your team advanced in code, you can add that functionality as well. But the platform itself is so incredibly easy to customize for your needs.
Right. There's a question with the upvote, so I'll go there. And it's about Power BI, OpenAsset and synthesis. So did you integrate Power BI or OpenAsset to synthesis or just Vantagepoint? So I know that you integrated both OpenAsset and Vantagepoint and Zendesk. If there's anything else you want to add there. And then I'd love to hear your thoughts on like how Power BI fits into this world of information.
We did integrate all of those things. I will say the Vantagepoint integration is amazing because we do have so much information in there. The OpenAsset integration also was fantastic. And we also utilized F.R.A.N.K to help drive people back and remind people of OpenAsset. For example, our administrator that runs OpenAsset, whenever there's new keywords created, she takes to F.R.A.N.K and she'll post those on F.R.A.N.K. So it's kind of, we're reminding both of the platforms constantly. Zendesk is super easy to integrate as well. And then Power BI, we have integrated. How we do Power BI is we kind of, we post the links to embed certain reports within F.R.A.N.K itself. So there is a way to get Power BI apps to filter into F.R.A.N.K, which was really important for us because we do have a robust strategic reporting app that we want to drive people to. And we also have links directly that will open that app from it. So it is fairly easy. I will say if you have a Power BI report that has a lot of columns in it, having it open in full screen or choosing a page layout that's a full page layout is really, really helpful, because if you try to cram that in with a column off to the side, it gets a little bit difficult to read. But yeah, that integration was also really important to us.
There's a lot of folks interested in Power BI, so that's great. And if there's any follow-up questions on that, attendees, please let us know. All right, going down the list, another integration question about MS Teams. They ask, what are you bringing over from Teams? And I think another part of that I'm interested in is like what goes on Teams versus what goes on F.R.A.N.K.
That's a great question. And that also falls under the change management umbrella, because I will say when we said the firm-wide Teams channel was going away because we were going to use the main feed in F.R.A.N.K, I think we caused half of our team to freak out, because what they heard was Microsoft Teams is going away. You can't use it anymore. But the good thing is that's not the case. So how we kind of separate it is you have to think of Microsoft Teams is a place where you collaborate with a specific group of individuals. So let's say it is a risk management team, and you have a Teams channel and you're trying to really work on some contract resources, but they're not ready yet, but you need a place to collaborate. That's when you take to Microsoft Teams, when you're doing that collaboration. So you developed the resources. Yes, we're ready to kind of deploy them firm-wide. That's when you stop using that Teams and you move over to F.R.A.N.K and you deploy the resources on F.R.A.N.K. So the way that we ask people to think about it is think about how you're going to work. If you need to collaborate with just a specific group, Microsoft Teams is amazing at that. But make sure that you monitor that group, and anything that comes out of it that can be shared firm-wide, even if everybody in the firm won't use it, let's post it on F.R.A.N.K. So Microsoft Teams has kind of become the catalyst of resources that eventually will make their way to F.R.A.N.K. It's not a perfect process. Sometimes we have to remind people. I'll see some firm-wide or some Teams channels that I belong in, and they're like, okay, well, this is ready to use. Here it is. And you just have to remind them, no. Get that back on F.R.A.N.K. Take it off of here so it only lives in one place. But that's how we kind of distinguish it between, firm-wide resources and you're collaborating to either work on a project or develop a resource.
I am curious about how you got that message out. It sounded like you kind of gave the Teams message, there was a reaction, and then you've helped people get to a new place with it. Was that like a lot of one-on-one conversations or announcements, diagrams? Like how did you help people understand that shift?
It was a combination of everything. It was posting a reminder on F.R.A.N.K. It was, verbally making sure that all of the individuals in leadership roles fully understood that, and then firm-wide announcements as well. We often joke you have to tell people 7 times something before it's truly retained. So we wanted to make sure that message was incredibly clear of, this is the way that you're going to use Microsoft Teams. This is the way that you're going to engage in F.R.A.N.K. And the cool thing is, because Synthesis has the integration also with Teams, where you can see people's team statuses on there. I think it helps people to understand, oh, okay, this is kind of cool. They're working together as well. It also helps that we are really heavy Teams users. So people are used to going to Teams. Our phone system is through Teams. That's how we communicate with each other. So I think that kind of helped to balance it as well.
Yeah. All right, this is a good meaty one. It seems like you have a ton of information shared on your intranet. How do you snag engagement? Do employees get a weekly digest, or is it their responsibility to visit and keep up?
Oh, I love this one. Okay. We do. We have the weekly email that goes out. It goes out, you can configure it directly from the platform. It goes out every Friday. And we actually made the decision, there's ways that you can configure it, where you could limit the posts that were made throughout the week, maybe to like the top 5 or things like that, or the top 5 with the most engagement and things like that. We decided to not limit it and just see what happens. So the cool thing is every Friday we see a spike in engagement in Frank because this email goes out and people can quickly scroll. We have our people featured first. So everybody who celebrated an anniversary is there. So that's first. And then every post appears that was put on Frank. So people can quickly scroll through it. And then they'll say, oh my gosh, I want to click on this. I want to look at this resource. So it's a really great way to constantly push people to Frank. But we don't just rely on that. Our content editors also have the ability to pin post or promote them. And we use this a lot. If there is a particular firm-wide communication that we need people to see, we need to make sure it's not lost in the post, we'll pin it for a week. So when you pin things, they appear at the top in kind of a gray bar. So even though you scroll through the others, it's right there, right when you log on to the main page. And then if you hit promote from there, you can actually shoot an email with that particular post out. So these individuals who are still like, Outlook's my only source of communication, I'm only going to look at that, they'll get it in Outlook. And then if they want to engage in it, it pushes them back to the Frank platform. So there's other ways other than just the one post to remind people to help with that engagement. There's also a lot that we do behind the scenes. Marketing in particular leads the effort in internal communications. We are reminding people, sector leaders, office leaders, practice leaders, our C-suite, take to Frank, engage. Our team members have to see leadership engaged in order for them to want to be engaged as well. So, whether you put 15 minutes for Frank on your calendar once a week to click on, and you're going to spend those 15 minutes going through and liking and commenting and maybe even posting yourself, that engagement also helps of just, behind the scenes kind of pushing people to remind them about Frank. And then finally, one thing that we do is if somebody's asking just in a casual meeting, I wish there was a resource for blah, 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 and we have it on Frank, we never say, oh, it's on Frank, go find it on Frank. We'll say, it's on Frank, look at the practice community on Frank. That's where you can find it. So we try to give them a little bit more information, so we just don't blindly send them off. So, over communicating about it always helps.
I love it. It's interesting. It's like different than sending them a link or just saying, find it on Frank. It's like, find it on Frank in this section. So they have to do a little work on their own, but with some guidance. Yeah, that's beautiful. So many good questions. Okay, there's 2 questions about training. One is existing employees, who are here during launch, like got the benefit of the slow communication and storytelling. What is the new employee experience as they get into Frank? And then the other question was, well, let's kind of roll them together, was about training. Like, is there any continuous training or retraining, highlighting capabilities that you're doing ongoing for folks?
Yes, so Frank is part of our onboarding process. So all new team members are introduced to Frank, kind of walk through that Frank 101 section. And the good thing is, since we did record our Let's Meet Frank intro sessions, people can go and watch those sections. But if they don't want to, there's also these quick little tips and tricks in how to navigate Frank. We are getting ready because since we're hitting our 6-month mark of having Frank, we are getting ready to schedule some Have You Met Frank sessions, just so we can open that up firm-wide over some casual lunch and learn type sessions of reintroducing people to Frank, because we've changed some things. We've like I said, we just introduced a new community yesterday. We want to make sure that everybody is still familiar with them. So we plan to continue with these Have You Met Frank sessions, throughout the life of our intranet.
And that brings us to time. We got through almost all the questions. Thank you, Katie, so much for being so transparent and just taking us into your world and your work. It's been incredibly valuable, I can tell from the questions we got. And thank you for all of our attendees for joining us and asking great questions. As we wrap up, I'm going to ask Chris to post a link in the chat that'll show you our other upcoming events. So in a few weeks, we have another intranet tour with Tower Pinkster, looking at their intranet. And, Katie's talked a little bit about project data and data. The Tower Pinkster intranet tour is going to go deeper into project data and how they work with all the systems and integration. So if that's interesting to you, that'll get that on your radar. And I think that's it for today. This was amazing. Katie, thank you so much for joining us for this.
Thanks, guys.
Take care, everybody. Until next time.